Snow fell softly. It blanketed the small town. Christmas lights twinkled. They glowed warmly against the white. It was Christmas Eve. A hush fell over the town.
His breath made clouds in the cold air. He held a small, wrapped box. It was old and worn. He hadn't seen his sister in years. He missed her very much. He thought about their last Christmas together. It had not ended well. They had a terrible argument. He regretted it deeply.
This year was different. He wanted to make things right. He had a gift he had held on to for far too long. It was time to find Sophie. James stopped at an antique shop. Light spilled from its windows. It beckoned him inside. He stepped in from the cold. The shop was warm and inviting. It smelled of old books and cinnamon. Mrs. Henderson stood behind the counter. She was a kind woman. Her eyes twinkled like the Christmas lights outside.
Can I help you, young man?
I'm looking for my sister. Her name is Sophie.
Mrs. Henderson smiled knowingly. She's been asking about you too, dear.
Mrs. Henderson explained Sophie was staying at the old bed and breakfast. It was just outside of town. James thanked her, his heart filled with hope. He rushed out into the snowy night. 15 years ago, James was a young man. He was full of anger. He and Sophie argued bitterly. He had forgotten what the fight was about. He just remembered the hurt. Sophie left that night. She took only a small bag. They hadn't spoken since.
He had bought her a gift that year, a small, hand-painted ornament.
He found it a few weeks ago, tucked away in a box of old things. Holding it, he was overcome with regret. He knew he had to find her. The old bed and breakfast was cozy. It glowed with warm light. James knocked on the door. His heart pounded. The door opened. Sophie stood there. Her eyes widened in surprise. He held out the small wrapped box.
Merry Christmas, Sophie.
Tears welled up in her eyes. She took the box. Inside was the hand-painted ornament, a symbol of their lost Christmas.
I'm so sorry, Sophie, he whispered.
She smiled. It was a Christmas miracle. They were together again. Christmas could heal old wounds. It could bring families back together.